Welcome, patrons, and everyone else, to our second part of our episode one of From the Sound Up, as we take apart Ostium episode 49, the Greater Boston crossover. With me once again is the wonderful Mike Nye.
Hello.
My important sound guy. So we're going to continue talking about how Mike and Tara go to putting an episode together and making it a finished product. I wanted to go a little bit into what your setup is with how you have everything arranged, what software you're using. Are there any other external tools you have? Just how you have it all set up to be ready to go.
Yeah, okay, sure. So in my little sort of man cave dungeon study area that I have here, I've basically just got my screen, keyboard and mouse obviously on top of the desk. Over here, which is slightly out of frame, what I'll do is I'll take a photo of it and stick it up on screen so you can see. I've got my audio interface, which is a Focusrite Scarlett 6i6, which obviously my headset's plugged into. I also have some outboard gear. So basically I've got like a Yamaha Motif, which is a tone generator. It's like a type of synthesizer, I guess you could say. And I've got like a little effects rack here that I don't use too much these days because everything's pretty much done in software. I also have a full-size MIDI keyboard on like a tray under my desk that I can sort of pull out and push back in, although usually I just reach under here and play on the keys because it's easier than pulling it out. I've got guitar back there.
I've just lit up the screen and seen that for the first time. So obviously you use that to start off any music, right?
Wow,
And then you go to the ukulele.
Yeah, that's right. No, in a previous life, I was in a band, so I used to play the guitar. I've got a piano accordion dicking around somewhere as well. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. So the other thing that I use is this thing here, which is called a fader port. Don't know whether you can see that.
Yep.
So basically that's just easier for me than using the mouse. Like if I need to make level adjustments or panning adjustments, I can also hit record, and then like while I'm listening I can modify it and it'll record those automation items that you can see, those bars of colors.
You basically have more control over it than you would necessarily with a mouse.
Yeah.
It'd be more.
Yeah, so they call this a control surface, right? So if you're reading about control surfaces, this is what they mean, and they can be nice little ones like this, or you can get massive ones if you're so inclined. I used to use this for doing the footprints, but these days I just use my MIDI keyboard. So this is like a little drum pad.
Oh yeah.
So I can
drum pad,
play the footsteps, but. Yeah, the keys are just as easy, so this pretty much sits on the shelf unused. Yeah, so that's the hardware that I have here. In our studio, which is at Taryn's house, and I use the term studio very loosely, it's a spare room at Taryn's house. We have a table that Taryn made, and around that table are like 5 microphone stands with condenser mics on. We use what do we use? Studio Electronics mics. I forget the exact number. It's whatever.
And that's for Guild of Adventurers you use that for?
Yeah, for Guild of Adventurers or and the Shorts podcast, or if we're doing any voice acting, we try and do it over there because we've hung movers blankets on the walls, so it's really nice and quiet. You can get pretty good recordings out of it. Yeah, so that's
maybe we can do what are the next episodes from there?
Yeah,
see it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we could do a walkthrough. I'll hold my phone
that'd be fun. Yeah.
And walk through. From a software perspective, obviously I use Reaper. I think it's really good. Like for the money. So first of all, the free version is completely unlimited. It goes into like...
That's rare.
Yeah. It goes into nag mode after a certain period, I forget, 30 or 60 days, but it doesn't stop you from actually using it. So like if you're starting out and you're a student and you've got no money, obviously you should buy software.
Or you're a podcaster.
Yeah. Obviously you should buy software if you get value from it, but... if you're just starting out and you haven't got any patrons yet, you can't afford to buy any software, then Reaper's a good way to get started. It has the same sort of it allows you to do the same things as a tool like Pro Tools or Logic that you might hear people talking about, but it's at a fraction of the price.
Hmm. And they
Um,
don't, just because it's a free version, they don't actually limit you with like, oh, you only get, 20 minutes of recording and
no,
then they cut you off or anything.
no, it's the full version. It just nags you when you start it up. Hey, you haven't paid for this yet.
Hmm.
Maybe you might want to think about paying for it. So yeah, so that's about it. As
It sounds like you've got a lot of hardware in there. Does it get hot? Do you have anything to cool it down
Nah,
or
not
no?
really.
Yeah, yeah.
Most of it's switched off. Like I don't switch my keyboard off mostly because it's a pain to go around the back of it and it uses no power anyway. But
Hmm.
my motif and effects rack and stuff is all powered off. If I want to run something through it, like I think I've done it maybe in one episode. I've got this thing called a Electric's Warp Factory, which is an old school vocoder. So like if you know Daft Punk, you can do that sort of stuff and
Hmm.
change your voice around.
1, 2, 3. AEIOU. This is the Electric Warp Factory.
So I think I had to do like a computer voice, and I can route the audio from like the headset through the effects rack and then back into Reaper. So I've done that a couple of times, but it's a bit of a pain. So if I can do it in software, I'll try and do that for the
That way,
most part.
right.
Yep.
But at least this way you've got lots of options to kind of play with too if you want to
Yeah.
try different things and see
Yeah.
which one you prefer.
Yeah. That's
And
right.
what do you use the ladder for?
Oh, that yeah. That's just ladder storage. I should move it because whenever I'm on webcam, it's not a good look, really, is it? Yeah.
It's totally fine. I'm just
Yeah.
just pulling your leg. Um, so when you're sitting down to start doing the first steps with an episode, is
hmm
there anything I'm using the term research here that you brush up on or anything before you even actually start touching anything in Reaper with the episode?
Um, I'll usually
Say like after you've read the script, for example.
yeah. So I mean, I'll try and listen to the episode. Like for given that these ones are crossover episodes, there's obviously
Hmm.
some research in the fact that I have to go and listen to the episode we're
The
crossing
shows.
over
Hmm.
with. I mean, it doesn't really stop me from cutting up the dialogue. Like, that's one of the most time-consuming bits, and I can do that without having done any research because it's just cutting dialogue, right? But
Hmm.
yeah, I'll usually want to do that. Or if there's any special sound effects requirements, so like in the script, they might say, um, like we did one once. There was a shorts episode called Buzz, and the premise is that this guy. I'm spoiling it for people that haven't listened. So if you want to listen,
So if you haven't, pause this,
yeah,
go
pause
listen
this
to
and
it,
go and
come
listen.
back.
But basically, this guy works for a technology company. He sleeps with this girl who, while she drugs him basically and puts like a little spider robot thing in his ear that goes into his brain and starts just giving him subliminal messages. And for that one, she had some really, when I say she, the author, Caitlin Kleiman, she had some really specific sound effects cues about how she wanted the voice to sound in the guy's head. And I had to figure out how I was going to do that. So I did a bit of
Hmm.
research on, different ways of changing voices around and things like that, working out what software, if any, I needed to purchase to do the job,
Hmm.
that sort of thing.
But you don't usually sit down and take notes necessarily as you're reading the script or anything like that. You more get it in your mind and then start working on it in Reaper, right?
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yep.
So how long does each part take?
Longer than you think. A lot a
Right.
lot longer than you think. Um,
This is why I wanted to stop doing sound
yeah.
work.
I mean, it depends how complicated the audio
Hmm.
engineer
Right.
requirements are. I mean, if it's just a couple of people talking and you don't really need to do any sound effects or sound design, it can be pretty quick if it's a good quality recording and you don't have to do too much to it to clean it up. Um, for like a fully dramatized audio drama with like sound effects and sound design,
Right.
it can take a very long time. I think on
Hmm.
average, for these crossovers, we're working to about 1 hour per 1 minute of finished audio or thereabouts. That can change. I was working on an episode of Dancing last night, and I think I didn't get past the first 30 seconds, and I worked on that for at least 3 hours, probably longer.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Have
it's
you found going through the season, because we've done, what have we done? At least over 10 episodes now. Is it going a little bit faster each time, or
it's about the
again,
same, really.
it
Yeah.
varies, I guess, with each episode too, and how much you need to do?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think there was the one that we did for what was the witch one? I can't remember the name of it.
Kalila Stormfire?
Kalila Stormfire. That one didn't take as long because a lot of it was just dialogue between
Yeah.
Georgia and the actor who plays Kalila
Lisette, yeah.
Stormfire. Yeah,
Mhm.
Lisette. So yeah, that one wasn't too bad. There was still a bit of sound design in there, but yeah, that one I remember that one being relatively easier, if that makes sense.
Right. Do you ever find yourself surprised by how long some things can take, or are you always kind of prepared for
Initially, I did, but I'm sort of used to it now. Yeah.
it? Comes with the territory.
Yep.
Do you have a checklist you work off or anything like that you reference, or is it all in your head?
I suppose I probably should have a checklist. I mean, the main thing is at the end of it, there are some things that I will religiously go through before releasing it, because different platforms have different loudness standards, which sounds ridiculous, but yeah, in order to make sure that your podcast doesn't get turned down or treated differently to other ones, you need to make sure that you don't exceed a certain level of loudness. So
Yep.
so that aspect is fairly important. So as I'm sort of going through, I'll try and make sure that if there are any bits that are much from than the rest of the podcast, that they get treated accordingly, to stop it from what am I trying to say? Basically, try and keep the levels relatively consistent and put a limit on the dynamics where possible without sacrificing the oomph factor that you get from basically having something loud happen. So I think there was an episode in Cersei where I think the planet was, there were earthquakes and things like that, where we had lots of big, loud, bassy things happening.
That was the world building one, yeah.
Yeah, so we had to be careful with that one. So we didn't break the loudness regulations, but
Right.
yeah, I think we pulled it off, hopefully.
Again, these are all things I've struggled with too, with my little Audacity thing and making sure it wasn't too like that. And again, it's one thing I hear often, and especially with new shows where they don't have it loud enough, where it's really quiet and you really got to turn it up, or parts of it will be really loud and other ones won't be, or the worst is when there's one voice that's really loud and one that's quiet, and if they're talking to each other, it's horrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Little things that...
Yep. I mean, there's lots of tools that you can get, and I've certainly bought quite a lot of them over the years we've been doing the podcasting. But at the end of it, I think the best way to do it is to listen through and make manual changes. I still think that's the best way to do it. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of dollars on tools that I just don't use anymore because they're not as good as doing it manually. So for people that are getting into it, if you get tempted to buy like an audio leveler, a voice leveler, just don't even waste your money. Just do it manually. It'll be better every time. Yep.
And obviously, the more you do it, the better you get at it.
That's right. Yep.
Now, do you? So when you finished something, do you throw it over to Taran to have him have a listen?
Yep. So the critical listening thing is kind of important. So obviously, you see here I'm using headphones. Again, some more experienced audio engineers would probably say that's a cardinal sin, and I should have reference monitors and things. And fair enough. That is fair enough. I probably should, but if you think about how
maybe
people...
not with your kids screaming in the background. That's a little tricky.
Oh yeah, sorry if that keeps coming through. But yeah, no, you're right. But I think you need to consider how people are going to consume the end product. And for me,
definitely,
I'm listening to podcasts on headphones, earbuds, or in the car. Right. It's very rare that I will sit down, on a couch on some hi-fi quality speakers and listen to a podcast. I just and I can't really imagine too many people doing it that way either. So what I tend to do is do all of the sound design and audio engineering on my headphones, and these are decent quality headphones. They're AKGs, studio headphones, so I don't feel too guilty about doing that. But then what I'll do is I'll listen to it in the car on the way to work, or on the way home from work, and see how it sounds. I'll flick it over to Taryn. He'll listen to it on whatever system he's going to listen to it on, and then you might find that for something that sounds great on headphones in the car, it's too bassy, or it's too SE.
I remember there was an episode of The Big Loop, I think it was, that had an episode where he'd released it, and then someone gave feedback about how when they were in the car it sounded terrible or something like that, and so they had to re-edit it, sort of thing, to make it sound right.
So I'll try and do that, but again, this is why, like in the music industry, mastering engineers are so highly paid, I think, because the ability to tweak a master so that it sounds good no matter where you're listening to it is a real art form, and something that I'm obviously still learning. I think you could probably go your whole lifetime without figuring that one out.
I'm sure. Yeah.
It all comes down to compromises, because any change you make to make it sound better in the car is obviously probably going to make it sound not as good through headphones.
Right.
But it's, I try and find a balance. So hopefully I have, and people that are listening are happy. Yeah,
I tend to find when I listen to something with headphones after I might have heard it in the car, I'll hear much more then, because I'm listening with the headphones. Absolutely. And it's much more enjoyable that way too. So much I can't always do, but that's kind of needs to be the focus. But it's good that you're trying different situations to kind of cover all your bases that way.
Yeah, for sure. I think you need to.
Do you ever have times that you're doing it and it's just not working, you're just not happy with it, and you kind of just have to scrap the whole thing and start from the beginning again?
It's pretty rare that I would have to scrap the whole thing and start from the beginning. What happens sometimes, and one of the reasons why I didn't make a lot of progress on what I was doing last night, was the script that I have didn't really have a great deal of sound direction at the beginning. So I was trying to think, how can I start this and make it sound, start the episode and bring it in. So there was a few times where I've okay, I'll take the theme, I'll play the theme for a bit, I'll fade the theme out, I'll put some ambience in, and then I'll listen to it and be like, no, that sounds rubbish, and scrap that part and then try again. So sometimes you'll do a scene and you'll listen to it, and I'll be thinking, yeah, that doesn't sound great, I'll try a different way. Usually what I'll do is just mute those channels and then start doing it differently, and that way if I change my mind and go back to the first method, I can just unmute them and keep going.
That's good. So you haven't deleted what you already done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yep. Sometimes what I'll do is, if I'm not sure, like I had a weird sound effect in the script I was working on last night where a guy drops a collection of those little single serving maple syrup packets onto the table, right?
Oh, okay.
This is the joys of audio engineering, right? So going through...
So is that different from ketchup packets?
Wow, this is the thing. So going through Soundly trying to find...
Are we talking, is this New England maple syrup or Canadian?
I have no idea. I mean, maple syrup over here, you don't really have much of a choice, right? So I had to actually, this is the kind of stuff you have to go through. I was messaging the author saying, now when you say syrup packet, this is what I found on Amazon. Like, is it this? And yeah, that's what I mean. So, okay, what might that sound like being dropped onto a table? So,
that's good. That's one of those moments where you need to find out before you can start to do something, because you could be totally going on the wrong track.
It seems so ridiculous now I'm talking about it, right? But yeah, so then there's going through Soundly and going through the Foley collections, trying to find, because obviously you can't just type in man dropping handful of syrup packets on table. Oh yeah, there's a perfect sound. So there's like little plastic bumps and alfoil sounds and all sorts of weird stuff like that. So
what surface it's falling onto.
Yeah, I'll just drag like a whole load of those into Reaper. And then, okay, does that sound okay? Yeah, that sounds okay. I'll use that one. What about this one? No, that one sounds rubbish, and delete that. And so there's a lot of trial and error involved with some of this stuff. Yeah.
Did you find the right sound at the end, or no?
I think so. Yeah, I think I got it. What did I end up using? I think it was an empty yogurt pot being placed on a table. There was a Soundly that had like a bunch of takes of a guy just putting a yogurt pot down on a table and just put them all together, so it sounded like someone had. Yeah.
All together, yeah. It's like,
yeah. Fun times.
So, when do you know that the episode, that the draft is ready to send to me?
Well,
basically?
Usually it's before all of the final like leveling tweaks have been done, and it's at a point where I'm thinking there's nothing more that I can really add to this to make it any more immersive or to sound any better. Usually what I'll do is at the end of like an editing session, it's usually pretty late, and I'm thinking this is pretty good. I think I've got it nailed. I'll flick it over to you and go to bed, and then if I wake up in the morning, I might listen to it on the way to work, and then I might think, oh, there's a few things I might want to add or change or whatever. But like by then, it's not really going to change a great deal. So like having you listen to the draft is, it's at a good point then for you to say, yeah, this bit sounds good, or actually I'd imagined some different sound effects here, or but I haven't. It's easy enough for me to go and change that without having to completely make big drastic changes. So yeah, that's usually what I do.
Okay. Well, that will complete our second part of this first episode, and we will finish it all up in the third part where we go into the final steps that are done for an episode and wrap it all up. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.